I saw one woman who came from Nigeria whose whole family were killed. She and her sister were the only two that escaped. Her sister had been shot, and they ran into the bush, and her sister died in her arms. And then she got out and went to a police station for help, and the police said, "Okay, that's fine, we'll help you. You can stay here. Here's a room with a cot. You can spend the night here." And that night, 6 policemen came in and later on broken glass and raped her. And she was lucky. She got out and walked along the road and found some people who would help her. I'm Arno Vosk. I'm a retired ER doctor. I've lived in this area since about 1985. Worked at Williamsport Hospital in Lock Haven, and also taught at Penn College for a few years. And I've been doing work with immigrants and asylums since about 2009.
What sort of work do you do with, what would a doctor do with immigrants seeking asylum?
Okay. Well, in 2009, I answered an ad for a course that was being taught in the evaluation of people who had been victims of torture and abuse in their home countries and were applying for asylum in this country. And I decided to answer it. There was a course being offered in DC, and I went to that and learned about the whole sort of specialty of forensic examination of people who were in this kind of situation. And so I've been doing that ever since.
And what sorts of things do you do? Why would they need to be evaluated by a physician if I was someone seeking asylum?
A lot of people that are coming here looking for asylum come with nothing. If you're fleeing your country, it's not like you get to take a whole lot of stuff with you usually. So many of them come before an asylum judge with nothing but their story. And sometimes those who do have physical signs of bad things that have been done to them, either they've been in jail and been tortured, or they've been attacked by gangs or whatever. I mean, there's a whole variety of bad things that happen to people in countries where there are difficulties. Then their bodies will show scars or other damage as a result of that. And so my job in this situation is to look at those things and to evaluate the consistency of what I find with the stories that they're telling about how these things happen.
And does what you find affect their chances of getting asylum?
Very definitely. On average, a person's chance of having a positive judgment for an asylum application is something in the neighborhood of 40% or below. And depending on the judge, there are some judges that grant less than 10% of the applications that come before them. There's a huge amount of variety in asylum judges. But having a physical evaluation and a physician's, or sometimes a psychological evaluation and a psychologist or psychiatrist or clinical social worker's evaluation increases their chances to about 80%. Sort of the holy grail of any immigrant to this country is the green card. And that's a permit for permanent residence and allows them to get on track to apply for citizenship.
What's the most rewarding part of this is volunteer work you're doing, right? What's the most rewarding part of it?
Well, there's a lot of it that's that's rewarding. One of the things, the discoveries that I made in doing this work is that I've worked with a lot of really good lawyers. Doctors are supposed to, and lawyers are supposed to be enemies, and we're all conditioned to think that way. But a lot of lawyers who are working on asylum are doing this either pro bono or for reduced fees. Many of them are working in places where they're not really making very much money altogether compared to what they could make. It's good to get to know people who have had a lot of difficulty in their lives and to feel that you're doing something that is helping them to at least heal a little bit of that. I mean, I don't, when I'm doing an asylum evaluation, I don't do any treatment, but still just having someone listen to your story and take it seriously and say, well, really, I'm going to try to help you out here, is still something that can be healing for a person. And then finally, in the end, if I get to hear from the lawyer that their case was judged and that they were granted asylum, then that's very nice.
Did your work as an emergency room doctor help prepare you for this role?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because when you're in the ER, you see everything. Or, well, you never see everything, but you see an awful lot of different things. And the other thing that it does help you with is that you get used to working in non-optimal circumstances. I've done a lot of exams in jail. I've done exams on lawyers' conference tables. You get used to just improvising and to working in circumstances that aren't optimal.
Do you think the attitude toward immigrants has changed over the years since you started doing this 15 years ago?
Oh yeah, everybody knows that.
How so?
There's a tradition. As time goes on, it disturbs me more and more, because the more immigrants that I see, the more really, the harder it is for me to understand how people can't have compassion for people who come in this kind of situation. People don't leave their home country. I mean, stars do. If you're a scientist or a conductor or something, you might leave your home country for a job somewhere else. But most people, ordinary people, don't leave their home country because they really want to. They leave because they can't live there for some reason. They can't make a living, or they're being threatened in a certain way, or their town has just been burned down to the ground. They don't move because they want to. They move because they have to.
Do you have any memorable cases that you can speak of? Or
a fellow who was in reasonably good shape, but he was shot at close range with crowd control weapons. And it turns out that the weapons that shoot so-called rubber bullets, actually many of them, to get technical, the muzzle velocity of those weapons is very close to conventional weapons. So if you're shot at close range, you're being shot with something that's a penetrating bullet. And he was shot twice, and then told by the riot police in his country, listen, if you stay here, you're going to get killed, and your whole family will be too. So he's here. And he's in jail. But I've seen people escape multiple attempts on their lives. There are many stories that are very tough stories like that, and I've seen people who were gay people, especially gay men, who in West Africa, some of the countries there, it's homosexuality is illegal, and there are militias that go around killing gay men. and there, one man I saw had a big scar across his neck right here. Someone actually tried to cut his head off with a machete, and fortunately didn't succeed for him. But his partner was killed at the same episode. So one of the things that I have seen very, very consistently is there's most of the people who escape very, very difficult situations are here because they're lucky. I first heard this story from a cousin of mine who lived in Brussels, and at the beginning of World War II, when the Germans invaded Brussels. She was 17 then, and she said, I woke up one morning and I heard what I thought was thunder, but the sun was out, and then I realized it was the German artillery in the distance. And her father, who owned a rental garage, knew this was coming, and he had prepared 2 cars. He had gassed up, and he loaded his family into them, and they started driving. But the whole story of their trip was a story of fortunate coincidences. Just as they were running out of gas, they found the last station that in the area that had gas. Or they would be taking a turn down a road, and someone would come riding down the road full speed on his bicycle and say, don't go this way, don't, because the Germans are just 5 kilometers down this road, go the other way. And time and again, I've since heard stories of just someone who was, left to die somewhere, and somebody came along and rescued them. And so what I realized after a little while is that the people who don't have these happy coincidences happen to them aren't here. Because you can be very smart and resourceful, and still, if you're in a real bad situation, if you don't have luck, you don't make it out. So those are the ones that I get to see.
Has doing this the last 15 years or so, has it changed you?
I guess I don't really know the answer to that question. I've learned a lot of stuff, but I've also learned how much I don't know. This work sort of does take you all over the world, and it does give you a chance to see people. There are actually people in Williamsport who are working with immigrants too. And I guess the thing that I keep on coming back to is, unless you are Native American or black, your ancestors came here as immigrants. And immigration law has changed a lot, but when they came here, if today's laws had been in effect, and they would have been put right back on the boat and sent back to where whence they came.